5% tariff on Canadian imports next week.
The tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule.
U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an order to levy 25% tariffs on imports from Canada.
For decades, America's auto industry thrived on a steady flow of vehicles and parts. But now, tariffs, trade barriers, and economic uncertainty are shaking the foundation. A 25% tariff on imported steel is just the beginning. Prices are soaring, supply chains are choking, and both manufacturers and consumers are feeling the strain. Even America's biggest automakers, relying on critical parts from Canada and Mexico, are at risk. Assembly plants in Detroit, Ohio, and Kentucky once benefited from seamless trade. Now, costs are climbing, production is slowing, and jobs are on the line. Yet Trump insists these tariffs will protect American producers and strengthen the economy. But is that the reality? Experts warn this approach could cripple the auto market, raise consumer prices, and threaten employment. And with Trump pushing for even higher tariffs, the question remains, will this strategy build America's future or break it? Auto production isn't just assembling cars. It's a complex global ecosystem. From gearboxes to electronic circuits, parts flow in from Canada, Mexico, Europe, and Asia. But now, Trump's tariffs threaten to disrupt it all. How much will prices jump? CNN's automotive analysis warns a 20 to 25% tariff could add $1,000 to several $1,000s per vehicle. SUVs, pickup trucks, and light commercial vehicles, heavy on metal and imported parts, will take the hardest hit. Why? Because tariffs don't stop at the finished car. They ripple through the entire supply chain, from Mexican engine blocks to Canadian chassis to Korean electronics. Every component now sits under customs scrutiny, and the fallout? Experts say higher prices mean lower demand, production slowdowns, and potential job losses. Canada, a major U.S. supplier, has already warned of retaliation. A full-blown trade war could slam American exports and drive inflation even higher. With costs soaring and tensions rising, the real question is, who's really paying the price? For months, inflation has been squeezing the U.S. market, and tariffs could crank up the pressure even further. Federal Reserve officials have sounded the alarm, but will anyone listen? If car prices skyrocket, middle and lower income buyers may delay purchases. That means slumping sales, overflowing dealer lots, slowing factories, and job losses. So who wins in this cycle? Trump wants automakers to cut imports and invest domestically, wrapping it in a protect American workers message. But does it actually help them? Experts say no. The auto supply chain is global. The U.S. doesn't produce enough steel, aluminum, or key components to go fully independent. Labor costs, environmental laws, and infrastructure expenses make it nearly impossible to shift all production stateside. Plus decades of trade agreements, NAFTA, now USMCA, built deep ties with Canada, Mexico, and Japan. Breaking those links overnight would be disastrously expensive. Trump's push to close the trade deficit has him eyeing higher tariffs once again. But Canada and Mexico are warning. This move will cripple production chains and backfire on American companies. Mexico alone exports millions of vehicles to the U.S. each year, many built by American automakers. If tariffs disrupt this flow, who suffers most? Not the billion-dollar corporations, but workers, consumers, and dealers. The Cato Institute mapped the damage in a simple graphical analysis, and the numbers are brutal. Essential parts, engine blocks, transmissions, steering wheels, seats, electronics, bumpers, all heavily sourced from Mexico and Canada. A 10%, 15%, or even 25% tariff means instant price hikes. Auto manufacturers already absorbed billions in steel and aluminum tariff costs in 2022 and 2023. If new tariffs hit, they'll be asking, how do we survive this? SUVs and pickup trucks, America's best sellers, are most at risk. If prices jump by $2,000 or $3,000, consumers might delay buying, switch to used cars, or skip upgrading altogether. Meanwhile, inflation is raging and the Federal Reserve is sounding the alarm. Tariffs won't boost the economy. They'll worsen inflation and disrupt interest rate policies. And here's the kicker. There's no such thing as fully domestic car production in the U.S. Even if tariffs crush imports, the supply chain remains global. So when the White House says we'll supercharge U.S. manufacturing, the reality is clear. They're playing with fire. General Motors, Ford, Tesla, they all rely on imported parts and raw materials. So what happens when cross-border shipments stall or skyrocket in cost? The answer? Chaos. Sure, automakers could invest in long-term domestic production, but that doesn't happen overnight. Transforming factories takes years, and in the short term, market instability, price hikes, layoffs. We saw the first tremors in 2025 when rumors leaked that Trump was preparing new auto tariffs. Media outlets like CNN and BBC warned of sharp price increases, and the Federal Reserve didn't hold back, stating bluntly, "If you think tariffs will strengthen the U.S. economy, you're mistaken." Yahoo Finance put it even more brutally, calling tariffs a direct hit on American industry. History agrees. In 2002, Bush's steel tariffs crushed U.S. manufacturers, wiping out thousands of jobs. Is history repeating itself? Meanwhile, global competition isn't stopping. Cars from Europe, Japan, Korea, China are still in the game. If tariffs blanket all imports, expect a pricing nightmare, with vehicles becoming unaffordable for millions. Some automakers may ditch Mexico, opting for a hybrid production model instead, but that shift takes time, and domestic labor costs remain a huge challenge. For consumers, it's simple. Car prices will explode. A basic sedan that once cost $22,000 could jump to $27,000. SUVs could climb from $35,000 to $40,000. Pickup trucks? Add another $3,000. Middle-class families will rethink everything. If cars get too expensive, people won't buy. And when demand collapses, so does the industry. A $6,000 price jump on vehicles? Consumers stop buying. Dealers sit on unsold inventory. Factories slash production. This is how a downward spiral begins. Even the Federal Reserve is sounding the alarm, warning that these tariffs might trigger a recession, not growth. And it's not just Canada in the crossfire. Mexico, a powerhouse for U.S. auto production, is also under threat. Trump's harsh stance on trade, immigration, and the wall has fueled tensions, despite the fact that brands like Nissan, GM, Ford, and Toyota have built a massive supply chain there since the 1990s. A 25% tariff on Mexican-made vehicles? That's not just a setback, it's a disaster. These companies would need 5 to 6 years and billions of dollars to rebuild their operations in the U.S. And who suffers in the meantime? Consumers, dealers, workers. Mexico isn't staying silent. Officials warn that these tariffs will hurt everyone, including America itself. But Trump stands firm on his America First rhetoric. Yet even industry giants like GM and Ford are pushing back. Why? Because these tariffs don't just hit traditional vehicles. They threaten the future of electric cars. With automakers racing to develop EVs and battery supply chains, tariffs on batteries, rare metals, and key components could cripple the green revolution before it even begins. Will tariffs really save American car manufacturing? Trump's team argues imports are out of control, domestic production is too low, tariffs will fix it, but when you look at the numbers, the picture isn't that simple. The U.S. isn't some struggling underdog, it's one of the top 3 auto producers in the world. Yes, it imports cars, but it also exports them. The industry thrives on an efficient global supply chain. Breaking that chain? It won't just boost domestic production overnight, it will create chaos. Building new factories, expanding capacity, that takes 5 to 10 years. In the meantime, tens of thousands of jobs lost soaring vehicle prices. Possible global trade retaliation. Trump shrugs off the impact. So what if prices go up by $2,000 or $3,000? America can handle it. But industry experts disagree. Even a few $1,000s can price out middle-class buyers, drive up auto loans, and tank sales. Worse, rising car prices fuel inflation. And if inflation surges, the Federal Reserve may be forced to hike interest rates. Protectionism sounds simple. Block imports boost local production, but reality, far more complicated. Just look at the last 5 years. The US, Canada, and Mexico operate like one massive factory. A single vehicle can cross borders 7 or 8 times before it's finished. Slap a 25% tariff on each crossing, costs spiral out of control. Canada warns, we refine your heavy crude. We supply your steel. These tariffs hurt you. Mexico fires back, without us, who will make your car parts? Trump's camp insists, we'll produce everything at home. But what happens next? 3 scenarios. Trump backs down, claims victory with a partial deal. Tariffs hit hard, chaos erupts, prices skyrocket, then a retreat. Congress steps in to block it. One thing is certain, even U.S. automakers aren't cheering. Ford, GM, Tesla, all rely on imported parts. Even Tesla's battery materials come from abroad. A single tariff disruption could halt production. Trump says, I'm pushing forward. But the lobbyists are moving. The Fed is warning. Congress is restless. 2025, a political gamble or economic disaster. This could turn into Trump's 2025 election battle cry. I'm blocking foreign competition at any cost. Some voters might cheer. Others? Furious. Car prices just jumped. And the big question remains, will tariffs actually boost the U.S. economy? Experts say, doubt it. The proof? History. Similar protectionist moves from Nixon to Reagan always backfired. Prices soared. Consumers bailed. Foreign brands kept expanding. This time, Canada and Mexico aren't backing down. And for the global auto industry, the consequences could be even worse. Canada and Mexico aren't backing down. Retaliatory tariffs are on the table. For U.S. automakers and exporters, that means one thing: uncertainty. So, what do you think? Will these tariffs bring production back, or is it just a fantasy? Is this truly America first, or an economic dead end? Economists warn, expect inflation, expect turmoil, expect higher prices. Who's right? Only time will tell. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and hit like, because this tariff war is just getting started. Alert.